take two, as opposed to take five. Huh. Yo everybody, my name is Ben Drescher, and welcome to my new jazz guitar YouTube channel. So basically, I've been playing jazz for about 3 years now. I've been playing guitar for 4 years, and I've loved my journey so far. I'm looking to showcase all I've learned, performances, vlogs maybe, and all that jazz. Today, we're going to be going into a lesson about a pet peeve of mine when it comes to jazz education in general. So, I think there's a lot of teachers out there, both in schools, university, and YouTube, where they take a jazz standard and they're like, okay, basically over the C major 7, you're going to play, the C major scale, C Ionian, and over the D minor 7, you're going to play D Dorian, and over the G7, you're going to play G Mixolydian, and blah 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 blah. But in reality, when you give a beginner student those scales to play over a jazz standard, it's not going to come out super well at first because they're unfamiliar with the scale, they're unfamiliar with what notes actually work well with the scale. And if you just give a student a bunch of notes to play over progression, it's not going to sound musical because they'll just be running up and down the scale all day, because they have nothing else to do. They don't know anything else other than that because they're taught to practice the scale up and down. So that's what's going to come out when they play. What the fuck? And now, you might be scratching your head thinking, now what does this kid have to teach me? And I'll put that disclaimer out right now. I'm not trying to pose as an educator. I'm so not far into my journey that I don't want to act like I know more than I do. I'm just sharing what I've learned over the years and maybe how I would have approached things earlier in my guitar playing journey if I had known these things previously. Okay, so let's get into the lesson. I'm about to offer an idea about a more beginner-friendly way to start soloing over jazz standards. So let's take a tune like Take the A Train, which is the first jazz standard that many people learn. And let's take the first 2 chord changes. So we have C major 7 for 2 bars. I'm going to flash it somewhere on the screen, hopefully. C major 7 for 2 bars. Then we have D7 for 2 bars. And a lot of educators would be like, play the C major scale over the C major 7, and then play, D Mixolydian, or play the whole tone, or play whatever complicated scales you want to play over that chord. But what I think is a better way to do this is give the students the notes of the arpeggio, which in this case would be C major 7th and D dominant 7th. And I'll flash here the fingerings that I'll be using to show these arpeggios. What we're going to do is take those notes, and only those notes of the arpeggio, and just create a rhythmic motif or some sort of musical motif to latch onto. And you're going to play it over both chords. And that might sound something like this. So we can take that motif, which was just da-da-ba-da-ba-da-da-da-da-da, or something like that, and then take it to the next part of the progression, which is a 2-5-1 in C, and that happens directly after the 2 chords I just showed you. And that might sound something like this, using the same motif. Or, or some variation on it, To me, that's a far more intuitive and helpful way of teaching somebody how to solo over a jazz standard. And the alternative, which is just giving them a scale, can result in confusion not knowing actually what to play, and might just sound like the student running up and down the scale and hitting or landing on a note that's undesirable, and that might sound like this. Something like that, where there's not really an idea happening. It's more just the scale unfolding, I suppose. And maybe that wasn't a great example of it. I was just kind of fooling around. But what you get is a student that's nervous, and they start to improvise, and some of the notes in the scale aren't going to sound perfect. Like, for example, an F over the C major 7 chord isn't going to sound good, but that's part of the C major scale. And if the student sticks on that note or something, they're going to go, that didn't sound too good. And then they're going to be frightened about improv from there on out. But when you give them the arpeggios, everything's going to sound good. And if you say, just think of a motif, think of a rhythmical idea, they can go from there and be like, okay, I can just create something in the moment using just these notes, and it'll sound better than me running the scale, essentially. And I'm not a scale hater. I think scales are really useful to practice. It's super good to know them inside and out. But I think there's something to be said about taking the notes of the progression and highlighting those instead of just, having a scale to basically, arpeggios are something that I think are super valuable in jazz improv, and if you can take arpeggios with a motif, you can really start to actually make music, and scales aren't music. However, I do think there is something to be said about developing knowledge of the scale to the point where you know what notes to land on, you know what extensions, tensions you can use, and then after that, once you really know the scale, you can use it in a musical way. But for like a beginner level improvisation type situation, I think arpeggios and motifs are the way to go, because that's where music is actually made. That's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching. Click subscribe if you like the content and want to see more jazz guitar related videos. And I hope you have a good day. Stay jazzy.